It's Mike. We got a special guest today. Go ahead and tell us who you are and what you've been up to, man.
My name is Aaron. This is my brother. We're doing a podcast live together.
Yeah.
Just been working, taking care of family, doing, the normal shindig kind of things, man. Um, Work's been good. Family's been good. I'm looking forward to taking some time off. I'm really looking forward to 4th of July. Get to meet up with my aunt who I haven't seen in quite some time. Um, Hopefully, my buddy Sergio can come through to that barbecue, but we'll see. You know, Yeah, it should be good. Should be real good.
Sergio, I haven't heard that name in quite a while.
Yeah. Last time you probably heard it was when he punched me in my mouth and I had to get stitches. Going to the hospital at three
Dude,
o'clock in the morning to get
dude, I saw
get
him
stitched
one
up, bro.
time. I saw him one time after that, and I think it was at your house. I don't know. It was at I think it was at your house, and he was telling me congratulations about joining the army at the time and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I tried to hang out with them at least once a year. So it's definitely not like we're kicking it all the time. Um,
Like you used
he
to.
he lives over more. Yeah, he lives over closer to like LA and like East LA area. So it's definitely a distance for me. So I live here. That's a long ass drive, bro. It really is. But we keep in touch, and definitely try to do something at least around our birthday because his birthday is a few days after mine. He's actually in between us, August 17th.
Mm.
So
So
yeah, yeah. So we usually try to meet up around that time and do something together.
so when is your plan to um, get your first house, you think? Whether that's a rental or just a primary residence that you're going to move into, like whatever that is, what is that goal for yourself that you have planned for yourself?
Well, it would be nice if I could get something in, the next 5 years, but
Yeah.
California is ridiculously expensive. I don't know if you heard, but they're implementing a new gas tax, which is higher than the last one.
I did. It goes into
And
effect July, don't it? Or August, something like that.
yeah, dude, and there is a very, very high potential for me to start seeing like $8 gallon gas prices, bro. It's gonna right now if I go to Costco, because usually I go to Costco with my membership. I save like 40 cents compared to like an Arco, which is I would say the cheapest gas you could buy. But if I go to Costco, I save about 40 cents a gallon. So yeah, and it's not out of my way when I go to work. It's just literally right off the freeway. But dude, I can't imagine $8 a gallon. Like
Mhm.
that's double what I pay right now. It's like, what's the point of buying a hybrid car if I'm just gonna end up paying more gas? I'm pretty much gonna be paying what I was paying when I wasn't driving a hybrid.
Yeah.
That's insane, dude. What are the gas prices out there in Germany right now?
Germany is they do by the liter out here, so um, it's like $1.50 per liter, but it's like 4 liters equals a gallon. It's not exact
Yeah,
4 liters, but it's pretty close to
no,
California
it's like
prices.
yeah, no, I think a liter is like a liter to gallon is like 3.8 or something like that. It's
Yeah,
like pretty
so
close to 4 liters.
if we just round it to four, $1.50, you're talking $6 a gallon. Um, so it's kind of pricey, when you look at it
Yeah,
from my point of view. I'm used to freaking $2.50 freaking per gallon, not liter.
bet you're missing Tennessee prices right now.
Oh yeah. Oh, oh yeah. But so what so I got a list of all kinds of questions for you. So what is your
Yeah,
real mission in life?
have a baby, bro.
Yeah.
Right now that's my mission. But to reach that, it takes a lot of work. Like I could dive into it head first. Like I could go and get Liz pregnant tonight if I wanted to, but the dude, like this economy, not just California, but just across the US, is very unstable, very unpredictable right now. And then on top of that, the cost of living is really high. Having a baby is another thing, that's another responsibility. It just, it's kind of, I guess you could say, sucks because I want to be able to have a child, and be able to provide for that child in ways that maybe my mom didn't provide for me or our dad didn't provide for us. But it's like, where do I draw the line at? Is like, do we just dive into it at some point and be like, fuck it, because the clock's ticking? Not for me, my sperm will be good until I'm like 60, but it's more so for Liz because she's going to be the one who gets pregnant. I'm not going to have a belly bulge in. I'm not going to have to push this child out of the JJ, bro. So
Yeah.
it's
Right.
like at what point, and then as women get older too, there's higher risk of things like autism, Down syndrome, just any type of mental health issues that you could think, even long term. Like some people think it's short term, like, oh, you could have a child that is autistic, but it could also be prone or put the child to be more prone to things like dementia, like autism, for instance, like down the line. So it's like the child can be born healthy, but what kind of health risk are you putting them at, later in their life because the mother was not, in a prime state, I guess you could say. It's kind of like lions, right? Like prides, lions. Uh, they will stop banging the lionesses, you know, once they hit a certain age because lions just innately know if you have a child, the child will probably not survive in this wilderness, you know? And that's like humans, except we got technology and houses and cars and all this crap
Yeah.
to keep us entertained. So it's like as Liz gets older, it puts us more in like a time crunch. So it's like I'm trying to get us to a point where like I don't have to worry, like I know that we're going to be able to take care of this child, no issues, any type of problems that arise, it's covered, no worry, right? But at the same time, it's like we teeter on like a balance of are we going to be there by the time we need to have a kid or by the time she needs to have a kid, or are we just going to have the child and go for it? So but that's my mission right now, bro. My mission is, outside of anything, is to have a baby, and have my own baby. I got two kids, bro, that I raise. They're mine, but they're not mine. You know, they call me dad. They're my kids. I look out for them. I do everything for them, but they didn't come out of my balls. They're not my lineage, and unfortunately, I want something like that. I want my lineage to continue. You know,
Yeah. I'm waiting to
because
tell Robin after she pops out Sophia, like, hey, I want to have one more, and then
yeah,
and
that
yeah,
would be awesome, dude.
and I haven't brought it up to her or mentioned it to her or anything like that. So I'm waiting to see what she says through this whole process. Because you can kind of catch a feel when they're okay and open to it, or they're just like, "This is the last one. Don't ever bring it up." It'll be
Yeah,
pretty
yeah, me
crazy.
and Liz actually had a lot of conversations about that because for her, she when we got together, she was kind of like open to it, but then she closed off to it, like, nah, I don't want another one. But then for me, when we first got together, I was like, I don't really care if we have a kid or not. But then as time passed, as I, got more stable in my career and everything, it was just like looking at the future and my aspirations for financial and family growth and stuff, I was like, damn, like I do want a kid.
I'm
Like
telling
that's
you right
something that
now,
I
bro.
really want.
The second that you like show proof of like showing a better quality of life, like better income and you get a bigger place or anything like that, the second you mention it to her, like, hey, I've been thinking about this, it doesn't matter what she said the last 5 years, bro. She's gonna be like, okay, right then. The
Yeah,
second that you
yeah,
show her like this true stability that she's not gonna be sitting there worried about living in a shack and whether you guys can afford it or not, the second you change that whole atmosphere, it's gonna be all right, without
yeah.
a doubt.
But it goes both ways, you know. Like some people don't got it to be like to the point of being able to just, take care of their woman, like worry free, Like
Right.
I got a good paying job, like there's no worries about being able to pay the rent. But if I have to do it on my own without help, from like another income like hers, it's like, damn, like it's just gonna make life shitty.
Yeah.
It'll be like we're gonna literally do nothing every weekend. We can go on walks with the kids. We can take them to the park because that's free. But when the kids are asking if we could go to like Castle Park or if we could go to Dave and Buster's, they're like, nah, we can't do that if it's a single income. So
Mhm.
that's where that's why I work very hard to build.
Yeah.
And speaking of building, dude, investments have been very lucrative for me recently. I
Ooh.
will say that. Yeah, dude. I don't know if you've ever heard about it, but it's known as the THTA. So if you ever look up investments, they go by like acronyms, right? So there's like Vanguard has like hundreds of funds, right?
Oh
And it
yeah,
might be
like
like
test.
VGV or VGT, VSA, whatever, right? So the one that I have invested, I wouldn't say like putting all my eggs in one basket, but putting a big chunk in is it's known as the acronym is THTA, and it's actually a SoFi. Uh, it's a SoFi high yield fund. I think it's an ETF, if I remember correctly. Dude, right now it's paying 13% dividends monthly. So obviously 13, you're not getting 13% of your investment every month, right?
Right.
It's
That's over the year,
13%
but
for the
it's spread
year.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, and they pay it every month. And dude, like it's been looking really good. And
That's awesome.
also, the price of it is slowly starting to get back to where it was. I'm lucky because when I bought in at a dip, so it was lower than what the current market is. But I also had bought some when it was at like a peak, so it was like, damn. So I'm kind of like, balanced out on the actual like value of it, but the dividends is paying out. Is like, man, you put another like, $1,000 into it, you're adding an extra $10 a month. You know,
Yeah.
very, very nice, I will say.
What are your thoughts on the real estate market kind of leveling out a little bit? I've been looking on Zillow and Realtor.com. I'll play with California,
Hmm.
Tennessee, all kinds of different places. And, half the places that I'm clicking on, it's like price drop 15,000, price drop 20 grand, price drop, price drop. It's just all over. What do you think
But
about all that?
uh, honestly, I'm not surprised because the housing market is extremely high right now as far as cost like value. Uh, Liz's grandma, she actually sold her house and it's down the street from us, and I actually passed by it yesterday, and they fixed it up and everything, but they're asking like 450,000, and it's a small little place, dude. It's a three-bedroom, one bathroom, or three-bedroom, two bathrooms, something like that. But it's small. It's got a little backyard. Um, but dude, 450,000 for that, 500,000. Like we'll round up just for the sake of numbers. It's like, dude, you're asking 500. I could go over here to North Rialto. I could get a four-bedroom, three-bathroom, brand new built house for 650,000. Like, why would I go and buy a house that was built in the 70s for 150,000 less when I could get pretty much the same price? If we're talking three-bedroom, two-bathroom, I could get the same house, same price, brand new house, all the amenities for like why, you know? And but that's why a lot of houses are dropping in price here in California anyway. Also, you know, the summers are getting hotter. A lot of these houses don't have central air, especially in the area that I live, right? Dude, I hate to break it to you, Mike. If I ever move into a house, I'm not moving into a house that does not have central air.
Oh yeah,
It's
central
not happening.
heating and air conditioning is a pretty common occurrence now. I have been seeing
Yeah.
people they've been it's pretty interesting. I've been seeing people are tinting their windows just like a car. You're just tinting your house windows though. I mean, obviously it's not
Hmm.
limo tint so you can't see or anything, but they are getting like, like the minimum level for like a car tint. They're just putting that light film on every window in their house, and these guys are saving so much money and
Yeah.
energy, and their house is cooler, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of the new houses that they're building, because they're building a huge, it's called River Ranch. It's just off of Riverside Avenue and the 210 freeway. It's just north of the 210. And me and Liz have actually gone over there and just like walked around, you know, when we go on our walks. But a lot of those houses, they're actually putting that like um, tint on the windows.
Mm.
Like it's just coming, like when they're building it, it's like the windows are coming pre-installed with it. And yeah, dude, it saves a lot of money. It really does. Hey, you got to think, man, when you have tint on your car, right? Say you got like a ceramic tint, which is like the high end tint. You could also get like an infrared tint, which is usually like the what people go for. But either of those two, they reduce the UV rays and the heat from them by like 95%. So you could have a very light tint on your car, on your house, dude, you're reducing the heat that it's producing or transferring into your vehicle, your house by 95%. That's a lot. And then if you have central air, dude, you put that thing at like 73, 74 degrees, leave it there all the time.
Yeah.
You're coming from 90, 100 degrees outside, coming inside, and your AC is running like maybe for like 5 minutes at a time, and it'll do it, you know, sporadically throughout the day.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
so
that's a
I
big
learned
money
that
saver, bro.
it's best to just leave your AC or heater, whatever it is. Once you have that number, just leave it there, So if your number
Yeah,
71, just leave it. Don't like turn it off during the day and then turn it on when you get home or whatever, because then it's just going to be
no,
running constantly all night long. You're actually
yep,
spending more when you think about it because it never turns off once you get home.
yeah. Liz actually showed me a video that she saw on Instagram, and she was like, "Look, like, did you know this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I did because because you don't want to overwork your equipment, right? Because when you overwork it, it gets hotter, and when it gets hotter, it pulls more power, and it's still gonna work until it reaches the desired temperature. But if you just have it set at 1 degree, or not 1 degree, but at the same temperature all day, right? It's not gonna overwork itself because it once it gets a little hot, it'll kick on, it'll bring it
Yeah.
back down, and then it'll turn off, and it'll do that all the time. Whereas if you have your AC off all day because you're trying to save money, you know, oh, okay, you turned your AC off, but you like it 70 degrees in your house, but then it's 100 degrees outside and you had it off all day. Well, guess what? You walk into your house and it's 90 degrees inside. Now your AC is going to be pulling 90 degrees back down to 70. It's going to be on the whole time until it gets back to 70 degrees. It's kind of like, unfortunately, our dad's house being in that mobile home that he's living in,
Yeah.
his AC is awesome, right? He has central air, but because mobile homes aren't insulated like actual
Yeah.
houses,
Bad.
dude, his thing will be his. Honestly, for him, it is advised to like up the temperature and then just turn it on when you get home because his thing will just run all day long. It's like he might as well just turn it off until he gets home and then turn it back on. Because when I was living with him, that thing, especially during the summer, it would just be on all day long when he would have it set at like 72. So Now I think he puts it at like 78, so that way it'll kick on a little bit. It keeps the house a little cooler. It'll kick on and off, but then when he gets home, he turns it down, so that way, it makes it more
Dude,
comfortable for sleeping
I
and whatnot.
I'm
But
I'm a 68, 69 kind of guy. Like temperature wise, it's gotta be like on the cooler side at all times. I'm like a fucking
oh
polar bear.
man,
I'm insulated and I don't even know why. I'll just be sitting there next to Robin and I'm just sitting there in shorts and a shirt and she's all bundled up. I'm like, dude, it feels nice in here.
dude, that's me and my lady, bro. I had to buy her a heated blanket because I like the AC on. So I'll have the AC on in the room, and she'll have the heated blanket on her, just maxed out, and just all bundled up, sleeping. And I'm over here like half the blankets are off me, the AC's blowing right on me. Yeah, dude, I like it cold.
Have you ever
I
heard
do
of
like
a
it cold.
guy named Ben Mallow?
I have not.
So he's a YouTuber, and well, I shouldn't call him a YouTuber. He's a real estate guy that makes YouTube videos. He's got
Yeah,
$500 million worth of real estate, and he's super big on getting loans, and he's super big on teaching people how to do it. He no filter. There, he doesn't sell courses or anything like that. It's just if you want to talk to
hmm
him, talk to him. He's gonna help you the best way that he can because he grew up poor in New York and everything like that, and then he joined the army and got out after one term, and just decided to do real estate and make real estate his goal, and he didn't know what his goal was at the time, but he just knew he wanted more money. And then after he's got his third rental property, I believe he said, his goal, which I call it your real mission in life, his goal is to now have an empire of real estate that he could pass down to his kids, and his kids are now much older. This guy's, coming up to 60 years old. He's in his late 50s right now. And he's got three kids,
yeah,
and they're anywhere from their 30s down to early 20s, but they're all part of the family business. They all go out there, they all buy real estate. They even run apartments. Like he'll buy an apartment, 250 units or whatever, and then one of them will just move their whole family and just start operating that apartment because their dad just bought it, for $40 million or whatever. And
yeah,
they're just so intertwined with it that it has become their life. They don't even think of life. Hey, do you want to go to school? No. Do you want to go play basketball and try to become sports whatever? Nope. I want to buy another fucking property just like my dad did. And when they
hmm
talk about it, and he'll say, "I'm gonna pass this down to you guys one day. If you guys sell it all and go to Mexico and blow it all, well, it's all on you." And then they're just like, "Why on earth would we do that? Look at everything this has given us. Why would we throw that all away?" And they are having kids and all
yeah.
that stuff. So when you hear about a story like that, what do you think of something? Like, do you believe that we all have that same opportunity with a little dedication and a little devotion to something like that? You think we could all have a little empire that we could, maybe not 500 million, that is kind of rare, but do you think that we could all work and kind of strive for that also and make that happen?
Absolutely. And honestly, it doesn't matter if somebody goes to school or not, right? Like some people will go to school to help them achieve that. Some people will not go to school and could still achieve that. So when it comes to like higher education, going to college, things like that, I will say that do it because you want to, not because you feel you need to. But if you are trying to like do a 9 to 5, like working in like a career business like me and you, right? Like you could say, oh, like I didn't do higher education and look at where I'm at. Like we know that you went to college and like you're on track to get your bachelor's still, right?
Yeah,
Or
well,
did you already get it?
well, no, I took a break from that because of everything that was going on.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I have 1 year left. I probably should just finish it. Then I'll have my bachelor's. But I have my
But see, look
associates.
at where you're okay. But see, look at where you're at without your bachelor's, and also look at where you're at without even your associates, right? Like you're doing really well for yourself. You own 2 houses. You got a family. You got a kid on the way. You're able to sustain and provide, and you know, uh, do what you need to do for yourself, your family. And even for like extended family, like for me, our dad, but you could say in a sense that the military was like going to college, right? Like you didn't necessarily take classes when you're in the military. You did, but we're talking more on like the foundation, right? So there's some people that on the foundation, if you go to the military, it's going to give you the skills you need. It's going to teach you. It's going to do everything that you need to do to kind of take those steps to become where you're at right now, right? Some people will do that through college. Like for me, I went to college. I didn't go to the military. I went to college, and I work for a good company. I'm not where I want to be, but we never really are. We're always going to be striving to be where we want to get to. It's always going to be a journey. But anybody who doesn't want to go that route, military, college, you could absolutely still become that $500 million, fund, that trust that you pass on to your family. It's just going to take a lot of work. It's going to find a niche in the market. You're not just going to wake up one day working, a 9 to 5 at McDonald's, making 20 an hour, which blows my mind here in California. I don't know how you make 20 an hour when that's when I started at at Taco Bell service desk after a college degree. You're making pretty much what I made when I started, right? But I don't know how you're gonna wake up one day making 20 an hour, or if you live in another state where it's like 12 or 13, or even minimum wage of like, I think the federal minimum wage is 8.75 right now. You're not just gonna wake up one day and just have it, right? Like you have to put in the work, whether it's investing the money, saving the money until you can actually make that investment into like a property, doing side hustles, having another job, whatever it takes. 8.75 an hour federal is not going to get you to that point in no reality that we live in right now. That would have been perfect back in the 90s, right? 8.75, you would have actually been making a little more than the minimum wage back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
No,
could
I think it was
definitely.
on like 550 or 650 an hour, so 875 you're doing pretty good.
Yeah, but nowadays, nah, 8.75 ain't gonna cut it. That's gonna get you a little bit of weed in your pocket. That's gonna, get you a couple meals at McDonald's, maybe Jack in the Box, Taco Bell, whatever. You might be able to take your girl to a fancy restaurant if you save and budget, and you could do that once a month kind of thing. But uh, nowadays, 8.75 ain't even gonna pay your rent.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what state you live in. You make 8.75 an hour, unless, well, I guess a couple states, excluded from that, but most states, 8.75 an hour, working 40 hours a week, every week, you're not going to be able to pay for anything. Because if you do the math, 8.75 an hour, we'll round up for number's sake. That's $360 a week before taxes. So 360 a week. We'll round up to 400 just to make the math easy. That's $1,600 a month. A lot of places you live, dude, 1,600 bucks a month. My rent's 1,720. You couldn't
Yeah.
you couldn't live where I live. Like you're not going to be able to afford your rent. And then you got other bills: phone bill, internet, electricity, gas, water, sewage. If you have sewage, trash. All that, right? So getting to that point of being able to generate that wealth to pass on to your kids, you can absolutely do it, but you have to think outside the box. Whether it's, you get a little side hustle. Like, I used to watch this guy, Gary Vaynerchuk, on Instagram. He started a media empire. Came off doing wine business stuff with his dad when he was a kid, up until, the empire that he created, right? So he runs this huge media company now, worth hundreds of millions of dollars, right? He did it, didn't do well in school, didn't go to college, kind of started off, I guess you could say he started off in a fairly better class than some people, because he wasn't poor. His dad had $1 million, wine or liquor store, you could say, worth like a couple $1 million or whatever. But he found a niche in the market and decided to go for it, right? Now, whether or not he analyzed everything and did it, we don't know. I don't know the guy personally, but he had an interest in wine. He decided, YouTube is starting to become a thing. Let me throw some YouTube videos out there about wine. And then it was known as the wine library. And he just threw it out there and did it. Boom. Next thing you know, it blew up. Started, took his father's business off the ground. His father started making a lot more money because people were starting to buy wine from his business specifically. Obviously, people would buy wine from other businesses as well based on the recommendation. But the whole point is that he dedicated himself. And at the end of the day, is dedication is going to be what makes or breaks you. If you're not dedicated, that's going to be, getting fired from your job or getting a promotion at your job. And sometimes you're not going to get promoted. You might feel you're the best candidate. There's somebody that's better, right? But it's still being dedicated through those highs and lows. You can't let the lows break you. So you just got to stick with it, regardless of what it is. And as long as you actually put in the effort, you remain dedicated, you take the steps needed to reach that goal, you will. It might not happen in 5 years. It might not happen in 10. It might take you your entire life, right, to reach that. But as long as you are dedicated and take the steps you need to, you could eventually reach that point and pass some stuff on to your kids, pass some stuff on to your cousins if you don't have kids or whatever, right? Your niece and nephew if you are infertile and you're just unfortunate, right? Like,
Or
yeah,
a beta.
it really just takes dedication at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Regardless of what to do. Like me, I would love to get into real estate. That is a long term goal, but short term, I'm much more dedicated to stock market. I think stock market for me personally is much more lucrative than trying to invest in a property that may, require, renovation, upkeep,
Yeah.
et cetera, et
Well,
cetera.
there's that saying,
So,
like you get in where you fit in, you know? I mean, you can't, you want to
yep,
be around the millionaires and their big old mansions, but hey, you got to start with your little shack in the beginning. And in order to get to your shack, you got to do little, you know, little stocks or whatever the case may be. So get in where you
yeah.
fit in.
Honestly, at the end of the day, when it comes time to, you know, hang up my hang up my belt for work, I just want to be able to have, I would say, comfortably living. If I could get like 10 G's a month after taxes in my pocket for the rest of my life, that's perfect.
Yeah.
That gives me a few months, out of the year that I get to hang out and focus on things that I want to do with my family. That also gives me time to travel with my woman,
Hmm.
like 10 G's a year. Some people will be like, "What? That's crazy." That's so much money. But right now, I could tell you that if I were to work for the next 35 years until retirement age, right? I'll be 32 this year. So if I were to work from now for the next 35 years and retire at 67, my 401k matched with my employer alone would generate almost 7,000 a month. Now, obviously, that's if I didn't get raises, that's if I didn't get promotions, that's if I stayed at the same pay that I have right now for that 35 years, which is unrealistic because obviously I'm going to get paid more over time, so that number is going to bump up. But right now, we're looking at almost 7,000 a month. That's off of one investment, an employer matched 401k.
Hmm.
One investment. Now, you have real estate, you have, stock market. If you want to and you're crazy, you could go with like CDs. I don't know who does CDs nowadays. CDs are honestly one of the worst
Pretty old.
liquidity assets. Yeah, obviously back in the day they were very, like, oh my gosh, this is great, right? Because when you're looking at them and they at the time when CDs were offered, they had a higher yield than the stock market did. So it's like, yeah, why would I not get that? Because I'm going to get a greater return on my buck, right? But now CDs are at like 3%. Why would I lock in my money for a year at 3% when I could keep it in my savings account and get 3.8%? And I have access to it. Because once you lock in with like a CD, you're locked in, right? It's kind of like bonds. Like nobody buys government bonds anymore because the return is crap. That's why I don't know if you saw the news, but I think the federal government bought like $40 billion worth of bonds
Yeah.
from itself. It's like, it, why?
So, so why do you think most people don't put in that all-in effort to try to do something better for themselves, or or like we talked about for future to pass something down? Why do you think most people just don't even try? It's not that they give up, they just don't even try to begin with. They don't even join the race.
Yeah, I think there's two parts to that, right? Or not two parts, but two groups. Okay. You could technically say three, but here's the two groups that I'm thinking. There's the people that don't specifically, right? There's two groups of people that don't. There's the people that literally can't. Okay. There are people that live paycheck to paycheck. They're actually in debt. They have no way to live without credit cards, and so they're so swamped that they are pretty much drowning. Now, can they? Yes. The amount of work it takes would be so exponential that they feel that it doesn't outweigh the life that they currently live, right? Because it's going to take so much work. It's going to take so much effort. It's going to take so much money at times that they literally can't afford it. When you got, unfortunately, there's some single moms out there with like four kids
Yeah.
working paycheck to paycheck. They got to get their kids to school. They got to pick them up. They got to drop them off. They got to take them to doctor's appointments. They have so much stuff stacked on their plate, so much stuff scheduled that they literally don't have the time. And then on top of that, they don't have the money. So it's like, dang, like you really are in a rut. Dude, it's gonna sound messed up, but the only way out of that is foster. Yeah, give up your kids at the end of the day. Like if you want to get yourself out of that, but then are you doing what's best for the kids, right? Like
Right.
because you're a mother, you're a parent, you want to do what's best for your kids. So there's people like that are literally in the shittiest situations, and it's just like, damn, like you really are. No matter how much dedication, time you put in, you're just stuck, right? Because yeah, people could say like, oh, they just need to put in the time, outside of that, right? Okay, they put the kids to bed at 10 o'clock at night. They start work at 6 in the morning. They put in 4 hours to do all this stuff to build a future, but then they're only sleeping for 4 hours. So then they show up to work. They're tired, exhausted. Next thing you know, they get fired, right? And then they have to find a job. So it's like
Keep going.
those types of things, those types of things are the things that people would, say, well, then that's their fault or whatever, right? But sometimes, unfortunately, in life, there are the people that are just gonna, how do I say it, are gonna be losers. It may sound tough, but I'm not using that term losers as in they're like a loser, like, oh, they're less than, they're, not a human, they're, not gonna be great. And no, it's just, there's in life there's winners and in life there's losers, and I feel like a lot of people fall in the middle of that, right? You have winners like Jeff Bezos, and then you have losers like people in poverty with 10 kids, and unfortunately the only thing that they can do is what's best for their kids. And I guess you could say at the end of the day, they're kind of a winner as long as they're providing their kids with the ability to have a better future. So just depends on how you look at it, right? But there are people that are genuinely stuck, right? They're just stuck based off of their life, whatever circumstances are stuck. That's one group. The other group is the lavish livers, the people that care more about showing off to others than they care about their own success. So they want to have that Don Julio bottle. They want to have that ding, 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 take a shot of tequila, right? Uh, those are the people. When I was in college and COVID was happening, the amount of people that I saw that were broke and they got those stimulus checks at $1,200, it was like life changing for them, right? Me, I did the same thing. I didn't invest the money. I didn't make good decisions. I blew it on BS. We'll
Yeah.
call it BS, right? Uh, but there's people that they prefer to show off. Me, when I blew that money, it wasn't to show off to anybody. It was because I had selfish intentions and, you know, and unfortunately a flawed human being. But there's people that like to show off with the Nikes. They want to show off with the Gucci. $1,200 stimulus check. They got Gucci flip flops for $600 or however much those stupid flip flops cost. I bought Nike flip flops for $40, right?
Yeah.
It's like you could go to Walmart and get flip flops for like $5.
Yeah.
So
I think I
there's
got my flip-flops for like $10. I think it was 11 after taxes. Yeah.
so there's the people that show off, right? And they prefer what other people think of them. Unfortunately, those kind of people, they don't really make it far in this world.
Yeah.
Now, there they sometimes those people get lucky, right? They care about what other people think. They care about their image. They care about the clothes they wear, but they're successful. Look at Conor McGregor, for instance. You
Oh
could
yeah.
tell that man is ego. He is ego. He is sometimes class. You know, he's got a little class in him, but he is very much a look at me kind of individual. But you know what he did? He worked his ass off, and he made it.
Yeah.
Dude became a professional fighter in the MMA, making millions of dollars. He, in a sense, he kind of has a right to show off if he wants to. If he wants to be like that, if that's who he is as a person, let him be, right? But the person who is like that, but they're broke as shit, they're saying, "Hey, can you give me a ride over here?" But they're rocking a Gucci bag. Like,
Yeah.
what? Get your shit together, bro.
Yeah.
So there's those people that show off that don't put in the work. They any dollar that they get, they always have to spend it on like the flashiest little thing because they want it to appear that they got it, but they don't. Okay? So those are the two. Those are the two. It's the people that want to show off, and then there's the people that are stuck.
Yeah.
Those are the two types of people that, unfortunately, no matter what circumstance, it's going to be tough in the future, right? Now, obviously, the people that show off are going to have a lot harder time than the people that are stuck environmentally or situationally, right? Because those people stuck situationally, they could sacrifice, right, a little bit more. It's just you. It's like investing in the stock market. How much risk you want to take, right? Do you want big growth or do you want like minor, like a little bit of growth over time, right?
Yeah.
So it's just picking and choosing the battles at the end of the day. And there's going to be people that are more fortunate than others, and that's just life.
Yeah. Yeah. This whole time I've been thinking. So you might even know some of the people I might be referencing here, but like we've all met some people where they'll say, "Hey, like for example, California is very expensive, and I just can't seem to get ahead here. New York is just so expensive. There's no way anybody could possibly make it on their own. They have to live with 9, 10 roommates, and then I found myself asking some of those people like, "Hey, um, so how's it going, right?" And then they'll say, "Oh, life is hard, life is rough, blah blah blah. You think I could get $500? You think I could get $1,000 to just help me out with rent and whatever the case may be, you know, I found
Hmm.
myself I found myself in a interesting analysis here because some of those people, you'll say, sure, I'll help you out, but on one stipulation, you gotta go ahead and write up your expenses for the last 3 months. Not that I want to invade their privacy and understand their finances, on like a I got you moment or something, but um, once you start asking, like, hey, you think I could go ahead and see exactly where the problem relies, so that way we can go ahead and work that out, because I might be able to help you in the short term, but in the long term, I would like for you to help yourself, that way we can invite each other over, and not just you coming over to my house the whole time. Now, when I say things like, "Hey, can you write your income for the last 3 months and then write your expenses the last 3 months, is it really going to reflect how expensive New York is or California? Or is it going to show me that, hey, California is a little expensive, but it's really going to show a much deeper thing, right? I'm going to see, $100 on Starbucks this month. I'm going to see $200 on the bar hopping. What is, when I say, can you write down your expenses for the last 3 months and your income next to it so we could see exactly where this problem happened, right? Why you're asking people for $500, for example. um, if you write it up and it comes out to, this is how much I make and this is how much it costs for basic necessities, then yeah, I fully agree. I think you kind of earn this 200 or $500, right? But when you write it up and you're just spending your money and you're just complaining about being broke, well, is you're kind of it's kind of you're blaming other people's, for your problems, like. And then have you ever heard of Dave Ramsey? Yeah. So he,
Across the whole spectrum. He
yeah.
will give you advice based off of your situation
Hmm.
and who you are financially than a lot of people. Like, so if he sees that you're struggling, he will give you very sound advice
Hmm.
on how to approach things at that level. And then if you're somebody on the higher spectrum with like millions of dollars, he will give you very sound advice on how to approach things at that level.
Hmm.
Um, One example before we continue with what you're going to say, but I read an article recently uh, that this lady called in. I think her name was Lori or whatever the name she gave, and she called in Dave Ramsey's show, and I guess her boyfriend, her and her boyfriend were together for 14 years. Why they weren't married, I have no fucking idea. But they had a kid together who was 12 years old, and then she got pregnant again with another one of his kids, and he up and left. Right?
Mm.
She was in the process of doing what Dave Ramsey calls as like the snowball effect when it comes to debt. So you pay down your
The
debt,
seven baby
until you're debt
steps.
free. Yeah, so she was in the process of that, and the last thing that she had was her car loan, and then she called in because she didn't know what to do. We won't get into the details of how much money she was making and whatnot, but he basically told her like, look, instead of paying down the debt, you need to save for a baby fund, which is complete opposite of what a lot of people represent Dave Ramsey as, because Dave Ramsey is a debt-free individual, right? But this goes back to him being able to observe and provide sound feedback and advice for any type of financial spectrum, right? So for him, he was saying instead of paying down your debt, continue to make the payments, but save for a baby fund so that way when the baby is born, you have that money stacked and are able to use that money for any kind of expense that comes up for that
Hmm.
child, right? And a lot of people, might be like, well, if you pay down the debt, then you could save more. But the problem is that you don't have that money up front, and sometimes you need that money
Yeah.
available, right? But that's why I like Dave Ramsey because he can provide sound advice, sound feedback across like any financial spectrum, whether you're poor, rich, middle class, whatever it is. You just listen to him, find what he's saying that relates to you, and utilize it.
Yeah.
But anyway, go ahead.
So Dave Ramsey is based out of Nashville, Tennessee, and he hosts live events. So every time he does his show, you can actually request to go on his show, and you'll be sitting out in the audience, and he'll come out and he'll talk to everybody and all that. I haven't had the opportunity to go yet, but I have been tempted many times, and he does it all throughout the week and weekends also. Um, but anyway, this guy goes and he gives advice to people on a regular basis, and one of the things that he says to everybody is everyone is he says everyone can be a millionaire. The choice is yours. If you don't, it's because you chose to not be. And
Yeah.
he says every time that if you really wanted to be successful, if you really wanted to be a millionaire quick, if you really wanted this and that, you really wanted to build an empire to leave to your family when you pass on, if you really wanted these things, then you would attack it like like uh like antibiotics when they're just going after an infection, like it's just going full head. It's not lingering around for a week and then doing something about it next Monday. It's going toe to toe right then and there. As soon as it hits,
Yep.
it's attacking it like it's a virus, because that's what it is. And then he'll say that you need to attack this problem. That's what it is, like it's a virus. You need to get yourself out of debt if you're in debt. You need to save up the money that if you are saving for your first rental or your first property or whatever, and all you need is this amount of money, then you should be attacking it like it's a virus, like until it's gone. And then he says every time, he goes, you should be eating rice and beans, beans and rice, very minimal meat, and you should be doing that until your dream comes real. And there's a saying, he doesn't quote it or anything, but there's a saying that a dream without a plan is nothing but a wish. And I fully believe that, and
Hmm.
I agree with Ramsey that if you really want it, you'd go wherever that you feel is necessary. You'll do whatever you feel is necessary, and just like how I said, like, hey, can you write up your expenses for the last 3 months if you really need $500 because it's so expensive? And if you deny it, well, you're kind of proving the point of what's going on. Now he has $800 million worth of real estate, and it's all paid off in full, all of it.
See, that's beautiful.
Yeah. So for him, he's making a lot of money in liquid, and
Yeah.
he made his own school. It's called Financial Peace University, right there in Nashville, Tennessee, and he has so much, just like he's constantly helping people, he's constantly building schools up and all kinds of stuff, and he has that saying, live like nobody else so later in life you can live and give like no one else. And it's just really cool. But so what do you feel about all these tariffs that are going on?
At first I was a little worried, right? Because I have a lot of investments. Like I do. They're spread across like a lot of portfolios, right? So I have like my Roth IRA and 401k. Those are just two like to start. But then I also have a growth fund. I also have individual investments like the THCA that I was telling you that's paying like great dividends right now. And then a couple of other investments in a couple of other companies. But when the tariffs were first announced, man, did I see a hit on my investments, dude. Like I'm talking, we'll say I'll round up just for sake of it, but in just my investment portfolio, probably close to 150,000, and it ended up dropping to close to 100,000. So we're talking like a 33% loss, right? But now it's up to total, I would say close to like 170,000. So we're on like the upside now. The tariffs were definitely a concern at first, but as far as an investor, but from an American standpoint, we're going to see two sides. It's going to be the side of increased costs, okay, and that's going to be short term. We see that right now with some products that we buy, especially from places like China, right? Like if you're shopping on Amazon, something that you saw that was $8.99 previously might be like $20 now. That's because of where you're buying it from. But from like the United States side, a lot of actual like in-house stuff that's produced here in the United States is actually cheaper. Eggs, for instance. I don't know if you remember, but about a year ago, maybe not even a year ago, maybe like 6 months ago, eggs were ridiculously expensive. They were just through the roof price, right? It was like $13 for a dozen eggs. Right
Oh
now, I can
wow.
get a
Out
dozen
there in
eggs for like,
California it was?
yeah, yeah. Here in
Oh
California, it
wow.
was like 13 bucks for a dozen eggs, dude. Egg prices were insane, and it was because of shortage, right? But now, eggs, I could get. I just actually bought a dozen extra large size eggs, and it was like $5, $6, something like that. So prices cut in half, right? And we will continue to see that
Seems like an
as far as
18 pack.
yeah, yeah, it should have been. But the tariffs will have two effects, right? Like it's going to increase the cost of overseas products. So any product that you buy from like China, Malaysia, Indonesia, India, Vietnam, because that's usually where a lot of our products are coming
My
from,
nose
is
is
from
stuffed up again.
Asian. No worries, man.
Yeah, keep going.
Um, yeah, a lot of the products that we buy are from Asian countries, right? You don't see Japanese labels, okay? South Korean labels, not very common unless you're buying like soju. But there's certain countries that you don't buy direct from because they actually go through countries like China. So China will get the product from Japan or South Korea or like Taiwan, Thailand, places like that. So
So,
China,
won't
Indonesia.
everything go down in price in America at some point if everybody's forced to make their products in America? Because Trump has stated many times that the tariffs only affect people who make their stuff overseas and then sell it back to the US. So if you actually make it in the United States, manufactured, made, produced, then you do not pay tariffs on anything.
So that's what I was getting to, is that there's two sides to it, right? Because there's two sides to the tariffs. There's the increase in cost for products outside of the United States, but the short term is also going to be an increase in cost in the United States, and the reason for that is because you have to increase your labor, your increasing cost, which sometimes, unfortunately, you might have to import, which is a big part of it. Is that if you're producing stuff in the United States, that's great, but where are you getting the material from? So then you have to figure out where you're actually going to source your material, right? So say you need wood, you're not going to be cutting down the Rocky Mountain, and Yellowstone forest trees. You're not doing that. So where does the wood come from? Well, a big part of it is the Amazon rainforest. It's unfortunate, but that's where a lot of lumber comes from because the Amazon rainforest is the largest forest in the world, and that's where we get a lot of wood and timber and lumber from, right? So obviously, there's going to be the increase in costs for sourcing labor because the United States has a higher minimum wage than say China's, $2 an hour or dollar an hour or whatever it is, having little children, sew things together because the labor laws out there, we won't discuss that, but
Cost
like
effective.
so the yeah, it's cost effective out there, right? But then because of the increase in, tariffs, is it going to be cost effective? So in the short term, we're going to see higher prices, right? But then long term, as jobs return to the United States, as certain places that we source materials from are favored, it will say favored, because I guarantee, I haven't looked too much into the tariffs, but I feel like we're not going to stack on 120% tariffs on Brazil when Brazil is the one sending us a lot of wood, right? We're not going to do that, especially because we got to build homes and et
So
cetera, et
one of
cetera.
one of the biggest things that Trump has pointed out is all these tariffs. So most of them are reciprocal, so they just matching what already exists. So
Yeah,
so if like let's just say Brazil for example, let's say there is a 125% tariff and we do rely on them, like hypothetical, we do rely on them for all sorts of wood, for example, lumber. Um what Trump is saying is, hey, uh, you are getting a tariff because you have a tariff on us, right? So if you charge 10% of all American goods, like UK, that was a real one. UK was 10% on almost all goods from America, right? So Trump initiated a 10% as well. And the whole world was like, what on earth? Why would you do that? And then he's like, why are they doing that? Right? Like, why is it that that
Hmm.
guy can sell my stuff and I get 90 cents to the dollar back, but the second I do it back to him, now it's, a whole issue. And so
Yeah.
Trump is saying, if you have one on me, I'm putting one on you for the exact same price. And if we do rely on somebody for a specific resource, what Trump has announced a few times is that we're pretty self-reliant. We're the only nation in the world that can produce close to 40% of our natural resources in-house. Most other countries struggle to get 10%.
You know what's crazy too is that the United States could actually, if we were to, based off of science anyway, and articles I've read, uh, not quoting like scientific research, right? We're not quoting like scientific articles that were written and published by scientists. This is more just general knowledge, right? Or not general knowledge, but just general articles. The United States could, in theory, provide for itself for 50 years without any outside resource, right? Now, by the end of that 50 years, we're probably going to be looking at a very ugly country, because we're going to pretty much have drained all of our fossil fuel. We're going to have drained all of our wood and lumber, you know. Uh, Now, you could take into consideration like replanting measures, like how they do in the Amazon rainforest now that they didn't do before, right? So every time they cut down a tree, they plant a new one in its place, right? And the thing is that that takes years and years to get to where it was. But one resource that we don't have that we are probably going to be unfortunately purchasing is fresh water. Fresh water is the only thing that is not renewable, even though water is supposed to be a renewable resource, right? Fresh water has to come from untainted, and when I say untainted, I mean like no salt, no bacteria, no viruses, right? Fresh water, untainted, comes from springs, rivers, lakes. Okay, that is one thing that we can run out of fossil fuel. Okay, that's great. We can eventually develop a renewable resource like solar. You know, I don't know if you've ever seen it off the 15 freeway, but a huge part of Las Vegas is actually powered by solar energy. I don't know if you knew that. It was
No.
surprising to me when I learned. Yeah, I think it's 23%, if I remember what it said correctly. 23% of Las Vegas is powered by solar energy. And if you ever drive down the 15 freeway, when you're going towards Vegas or leaving Vegas, if you're leaving Vegas, it'll be on the right hand side. If you're coming into Vegas, it'll be on the left, right? There are three, I think it's three, ginormous solar plants, and they provide a lot of energy just through those three plants, but they are strictly for the use in Nevada and more so for Vegas. They provide a huge amount of power. Now, deserts. The great thing about deserts is that there's usually no clouds. If you go to the desert, you go to the Sahara Desert. There's no clouds,
No.
because it's so damn hot. And where from the ocean, the coast, over to the middle of the desert is a long journey, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the water in like Colorado, a lot of those clouds are from groundwater. Those clouds don't come from the coast. If you ever notice it here in California, Southern California specifically, you hit Rialto, San Bernardino County, the clouds dissipate. You go over to like Irvine, it could be cloudy all day long, right? Because the heat, the rain, precipitation, all that, science,
Yeah.
it, eventually moves over. So, as far as renewable energy goes, we could definitely build plants that could sustain all of the United States as far as electricity goes,
Yeah.
power, right?
Yeah.
So,
Trump has
but
initiated, I believe it was 4 power plants.
for like renewable power plants or like coal burning power plants?
No, like nuclear power
Oh,
plants.
nuclear is, yeah, nuclear is also a very sustainable. That is that out of all sustainable energy, nuclear is at the top of the list.
Yeah, and
But there
he's
are
having
very,
4 built.
see, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome because nuclear power plants create the most amount of energy out of all renewable resources.
Hmm.
I even think that they actually produce more energy than like a coal bearing or coal burning power plant does, which is usually where we get a lot of our electricity from, is from burning coal. Uh, it's actually crazy to think about, but the United States is very self-sustaining. It's just, are we going to take the measures to keep it sustaining? And on top of that, fresh water is always going to be a concern.
Yeah. You know Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I was just thinking about him when it comes to. I was thinking about his podcast with Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan's all like, wait, can't we just like take fresh water out of the ocean? Like, can't we process it? And Neil deGrasse was like, yes, we can. And he's all like, so why don't we? He's like, well, who's gonna pay for it?
Yeah.
Because it takes a lot of energy to remove all the salt. There's so
Yeah.
much salt in the ocean. Like if you have 1 gallon of water, right, and you remove all the salt, now you probably have like 2/3 a gallon of water because there's so much salt in it that it's actually not water. It's
Yeah.
salt water.
Right.
So
Yeah, you'd probably have like 1 cup of water for every gallon of salt water,
yeah,
something like that.
but potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of energy to do that. It takes a huge amount of energy to extract fresh water from salt water because, it's like unboiling something, you know?
Hmm.
It doesn't take a whole lot of energy to boil water. It takes a lot of heat, which in turn is energy, but it doesn't take too much, right? Like you can boil water and it takes energy, but it doesn't take that much energy. But to unboil water,
Yeah.
that's something different. I don't even think that's the thing. That's pretty much like freezing, right? But
Yeah, that's
you know what
yeah,
I'm
that's
saying. You know what I'm saying.
yeah. You have to do some chemistry greenhouse something like that to try to recreate like
Yeah,
undo what you did somehow. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So what do
Yeah.
you
It's not oil. It's not oil and water.
right.
Like you can't just pour the top off.
So what do
So
you think about so let's say you buy let's just say a 20 unit apartment. Let's just say you found one and you're like, "Hey, it's within my means. I can afford this, etc." Right? And you put it on the market, and for some reason, you just can't seem to be getting anybody. It just doesn't make sense. You did the numbers before you bought it, but just for some reason, the reality of it, nobody wants to move in. And then you decide to go, well, I could turn it into a 55 and older community. I could turn it into Section 8 housing. I could do these little hacks, so to speak, to try to get the place filled. What do you think about those different options like that besides just buying a house and then renting it straight to the regular market?
oh yeah, well, we're talking about two completely different markets, right? So If you're talking about selling the whole complex and then just buying like actual houses, I feel like that would be a less lucrative move. Okay. Now, we also have to consider like, do you have a loan on the place? Or did you buy it out
Yes.
like right, you know? Because so we do have a loan. We do
20%
have a
down.
loan. Okay. So say we have a loan on the place, right? Now you have to look at how much your monthly payment is. If you bought a 20 unit apartment complex, your mortgage is probably looking at close like upwards of maybe 20,000 a month, because it's going to be a 20 million, close to property. Maybe not 20 million, depends on where you're located and the size of the units and et cetera, et cetera. But we'll downgrade it just for number's sake. We'll say
Let's
that
let's say
it
it's
was
five
10 million,
million. Yeah, 10 million's good.
5 million. Okay. Yeah, 5, 10 million, right? So you got a 20 unit place. Okay, your mortgage is probably for a $5 million loan, for a 30-year mortgage. You're probably looking at pretty close to like 15, 20,000. We can punch it into a calculator to find the specifics on that, right? But you're probably looking at $15,000 to $20,000 a month. Okay, that means that at least you will have to break for 20, we'll say 20,000 a month just for the sake of 20 units. You would have to have at least $1,000 per unit to break even on your mortgage. Okay. Now, obviously, if you're having a rental, you want to make a little bit of profit. Now, if you're not renting the place out, I would first, before you decide to go to the government for Section 8 and get like a stipend or kind of, like a kickback in a sense, from the government to be able to house that, or turning it into like a senior living center, I would say look at what you're charging. You know, if your mortgage for this 20 unit property is $20,000 a month, but you're charging $2,000 a unit, you should probably reassess what you're charging, right?
Right.
Because now you're doubling. You're doubling what your mortgage is owed. So you're basically getting $20,000 a month on top of what you're paying for your mortgage. So you're making 40,000, right? And you're paying 20,000 for the mortgage. You can reassess. A 20 unit property, right? Say you are only making $100 per unit. That's $2,000 a month. That may not seem like a lot to some people. They may, especially these like real estate gurus and whatnot. They're like, what, 2,000 bucks a month off of a 20 unit? But the thing is that you're not paying anything, right, out of your own pocket. That's 2,000 bucks going into your own pocket. Now, we don't have to be like stingy to ourselves either. We could be like, you know what? Let's do $200 on top, right? So the unit is 1,200 bucks a month. Dude, that's 4,000 bucks, right? You
Yeah.
cut half of that, put it into a fund that is supposed to cover like costs, expenses, whatever may break, and etc. You know, and then there's other things that you could think about. Other factors is that like, how do you want to do like water? Do you want to have each unit have their own water? Do you want to have each unit have their own internet, or do you want to just bundle with Spectrum and have like everybody just pays a flat fee, for having internet everywhere kind of thing? Like there's so many different avenues that you could take instead of just being like, you know what, I'm selling, you know what, Section 8, you know what, elderly people, there's a lot of different like factors and avenues that you could think about and actually try to tackle first. Because if you have a 20 unit place and you're not renting any unit, chances are you're charging too much.
You
No,
probably
but
probably
no,
you're charging too much, or you kind of bought that taboo place, right? Where, I mean,
yeah.
we all hear about them, like, oh man, you're living over there in those apartments. Oh man, there's always, and then
Hmm.
some investor comes in, buys it, and doesn't realize what they bought, even though the numbers looked good on
Yeah.
paper.
That's the thing about property, though, is that property is only as valuable as the land that it sits on. The land, the ground is always going to be worth way more. Like some people might be like, but if I tore down the house, I could only sell this lot for $1 million. Yeah, but it's the land at the end of the day, right? Because think about what you could do with land. You buy an apartment complex, okay? You buy it for $5 million, can't rent out a single unit because it's taboo. Nobody wants to live there. XYZ got murdered in A, B, and C, right? You got like 12 murders on the property because it's just a shitty ass lot, right? A bunch of people got murdered. Nobody wants to live there anymore. Well, you know what you do? You file for commercial. You turn the land into a profit. Now, the thing is that some people will be like, but I don't have the money for that. I can't afford to tear down this apartment complex and then build a warehouse or tear it down and build a shopping center. Yeah, that's the great part about it. You don't have to. You don't have to spend a dime because what you own is the land.
Yeah.
And guess what? Investors always want places to build. Investors always want land to be able to see their dreams come true in a sense, right? So you don't actually have to spend anything. You just have to find the people that want to use the land. If nobody wants to build the apartment, if no 55 community wants to live there, you can file for Section 8. That's great, but then you're not really doing a service for the community because
Right.
say for instance, you're in an apartment complex that you got 10 murders in, right? But you're in Beverly Hills. There's not going to be any person in Beverly Hills that's going to want Section 8. Nobody.
Yeah, you might
So
not
it's
even
a
get it
high,
approved in the county.
yeah, like nobody's going to want that. Nobody's going to want a senior center. It's the lifestyle of Beverly Hills. You live in Beverly Hills, you expect the grandparents to live with the children, or whatever it might be, or the children living with the grandparents. It's just a rich neighborhood, right? So turn it into something useful. You know, go and find people. Go and say, hey, look, I have this 275,000 square foot lot that has a building on it that is an apartment complex, but we can turn it into something else.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we'll have to file paperwork with the county to get approved because the county has to approve whether or not it's residential or commercial. So you will have to get it approved, right? But that's just a little obstacle. A lot of counties are more than willing to approve transitions like that as long as it will benefit the community. Look at the location. Oh, you're in the middle of a bunch of houses? Well, a shopping center would be really good for business, right? You put up a Stater Brothers or a Vons. Stater Brothers is more like, like a poor income area. It's not a Ralph's, even though Ralph's is not great, but Vons, right? Vons is like a Beverly Hills store. It's a north of the 210 kind of store, right? So you put up a Vons, you put a couple restaurants, you put a nail salon, a gym. Uh, Next thing you know, you just turn this poor investment into a lucrative one because of the fact that these people want to build stuff. There's investors that always want to build stuff, especially real estate investors, whether it's commercial, residential, they don't care. They just want money. So they invest, they build, they do it all for you. And guess what? At the end of the day, no matter how the contracts are written out, you're the one who still owns the land. You're the one who still owns the actual property. And that's what's beautiful about it.
What are your thoughts on subject to purchases?
Can you explain what subject to purchases are? Because I have no idea what you're referring
So, um, it's it's a part of a creative finance. So let's just say you didn't have any money to buy a house, and you're like, "How I really want to buy this house. How can I do it?" Um, Subject to is you're going up. Usually, it's somebody in distress. Usually, somebody facing foreclosure. Somebody that doesn't know what to do with this house they just inherited. Something's going on. They're in some kind of distress mode. right? They don't know what to do next. Okay. So what people will do is they'll go up and they'll say, "Hey, I'll buy this house subject to the terms that I provide." Now, the terms are usually like, "Hey, how much equity do you have? I see your house is worth 300,000 and you have $120,000 in equity." And what these people will do is they'll go up and they'll buy the house and they'll say, "I'll buy it for 300,000." But then they will go and say, "Hey, I will refinance when the rates drop and we'll check again in 2 years from now. Um, if they refinance, I'll purchase it at a, or if they drop, I'll refinance and buy it for 300,000 and then I'll pay you back your equity portion. Otherwise, whatever the case is, they'll work out a deal, something like that, like, hey, I'll pay you back your equity um, in the next 4 years." And what they'll do is they'll usually say yes, because um, in this case, you buy the house without going through the banks, without doing any closing costs, without doing anything like that. So you basically go up, you purchase the home that they are asking for at 300,000, but you're only paying that person their portion of the equity. And then they transfer you the title, but they keep the loan. You don't get the loan, not until later. And so it's kind of like a, hey, I'll cash you out of what you owe on your equity over the next few years. I'll give you a monthly payment if you want to cash you out. So you basically go in and buy these homes, say 120,000 in equity, and the house is worth 300,000. Well, you're only paying them back the 120 grand that they already paid. So you're just giving back their money over a few years, and then you keep the title. And now the loan gets cleared because you refinance it later. See what I mean? It's a little confusing how
It
it sound
sounds,
like, but
yeah, it sounds very confusing. So pretty much, somebody has a $300,000 loan. They have paid $120,000 into that loan, and then you come in and you say, "Hey, look, you're in a tough spot, so I will give you $120,000, which is what they paid into it for the house,
hmm
but the loan is still under their name."
yes,
So pretty much you're paying. So if they were to take that $120,000 and put it to the loan, then they still owe 60,000 bucks, but they don't own the house anymore.
right,
It's not their house. Yeah. Man, like it sounds like it could be very beneficial to the buyer, but
yeah,
it really fucks over the seller.
yeah. Well, that, like I said, usually when people do that, obviously I've never done that, but when people do that, they usually are in some kind of distress mode, and most of the time, when you look at their stories, they usually don't even want to sell their house. They just need some quick money for whatever the situation is,
Hmm.
like usually these guys, they'll go in and say, "Hey, how much do you own on the house, blah blah blah." Like, "Oh, I just got it a few years ago, I only own like 10 grand, blah blah blah, but this and this is going on," right? Then that's when the buyer will say, "Hey, I'll buy it for this price, I'll refinance later, blah blah blah, but I'm not refinancing and buying now, because if you buy," and then they'll break it down like, "Look, you're going to have to pay closing costs, you're going to have to pay your real estate agent fees, even though you only own 10 grand and you're trying to sell quick for cheap, you're still going to have to come out of pocket like 10 grand out of nowhere." And he's
Yeah.
like, "Well, how about we avoid all that, you sign title over to me, in return I'll give you 25 grand cash now." Obviously it's not cash in that moment, but wire it,
Yeah.
in 24 hours, and I'll give you 25 grand. I'll buy the house at this price in 4 years time, blah blah blah, as long as these criterias are met. And in the meantime, they'll usually say yes. Now in the meantime, the buyer, once he gets title, once he pretty much claims ownership, now he can do whatever he wants to it. Now he can rent it out to whoever, But if the price was here and now he could rent it here and he's making $600 a month on it because of this transaction, it is what it is, you know. And then 4 years time, maybe they don't meet up to those terms, subject to your terms. Maybe something's not being held up, so then, you know, it is what it is. Like either they get their stuff back or you get the house, and it's just, yeah, pretty wild. Obviously,
Yeah.
I've looked into it, but I've never actually done it or anything.
Yeah, honestly, that man, like from a moral standpoint, that it's kind of fucked.
It is. It
Like
really
it,
is.
it, you like I'm all for making money, right? I'm all for getting a big paycheck at the end of the day, right? But one thing that I don't think I could ever do is do it on the back of somebody,
Yeah.
especially through like a method of like manipulation, because some people might be like, well, you're not manipulating them because the terms are laid out, blah blah, but you kind
Yeah.
of are, because
Yeah.
you're taking advantage of them being at a low point and needing assistance, right? And then you're like, well, here's my time to swoop in. Like you, man, from a moral standpoint, that is just like
Wrong.
dude, you're literally doing somebody dirty
Yeah.
just for your own financial benefit. And
Yeah.
you know, I couldn't do that personally. Now, what I would prefer to do is like look into those. It's where people don't pay their property tax, but more so the bank. I don't know if you ever heard about this, but say for instance a bank owns property, right? Because that's usually what happens when a foreclosure occurs, is that the bank now takes ownership. You gotta look for those places where the bank forgot to pay their taxes, because what
Oh
you
yeah.
can do, yeah, you can go in
Buy the
and
property
basically screw the
taxes.
bank. But yep, pay the property taxes off. You send a notice to the bank and you say, "Hey, look, I paid the property taxes. Okay, it was $38,000. Because I paid the property taxes, what's great about that is you could set whatever APR you want. You could set whatever repayment that you want. You could say, look, I paid the property taxes, well, under certain guidelines, right? But you could say, I paid the property taxes. I paid $38,000 on the property taxes that you haven't paid in the last 4 years, and I expect you to pay me back 52,000 bucks. And if you don't, then I will take ownership of the property. And the thing is that the property might be worth 400,000 bucks. Now, whether or not the bank decides to pay you back or not, that's up to the bank. But the fact is that you have paid the property tax. So legally, under federal purview, you now own that property because you're the one who paid the taxes on it.
Hmm.
And if they don't decide to pay you back, I think it's 9 months is what they give. It's like a 9 month period that you can go back and forth, blah, blah. But within 9 months, if they don't pay you back the money plus whatever the terms are, um, you pretty much take ownership of the property. And then you can file. You wouldn't file through the state at that point. You would file through the federal government for a pretty much it's like a title for the property, right? But you're not getting a title for the house. You're getting a title for the actual land. And that's what it goes back to the previous conversation. The land is most important out of everything. A building can come and go. You can break it down, build it up, do whatever, right? But the land is what the federal government cares about. They don't care what you do with your land as long as it's legal. They don't want you buying land and building like a ginormous meth factory, right? Nobody wants that.
Right.
Nobody in this world wants
That was
it.
all of our
We don't
first
need no.
thoughts.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? Like the land at the end of the day is gonna be the most valuable asset that anybody can own, whether there's a building on it, whether there's no building on it. So, as far as that, like, subject to kind of thing, like, I personally could never go to somebody and be like, oh, you're in a vulnerable place. Well, give me your house. Here's 60,000 bucks, right? I couldn't feel right with myself doing that because I know at the end of the day, if I did do that, like, I'm probably in a low point myself. and
Gotcha.
that's why I need to take advantage of somebody else because I am already in a place where it's like, damn, like if I don't take advantage of this person, then I could be screwed, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'd rather just find those places that the banks are overlooking, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, find some place that like a realty or like a realtor office is overlooking, or whatever it is. So I find a place that a business is not keeping eyes on and screw them over
Yeah.
because
Right.
businesses will always bounce back at the end of the day. And if it tanks your business, well, you should have been better about it. I don't mind screwing over businesses. I don't like screwing over people.
Yeah. Now, what are your thoughts about trying to do your own like fixer upper? Like where you go in and whether you're doing most of the maintenance yourself, whether that's patching up drywall or whatever that case is. How do you feel about doing stuff like that? Or you're just not interested in those kinds of things?
Oh no, dude, I love DIY. I really do. I like. I don't know. Like even before me and Liz got together, like moved in, her neighbor always would be like he would come to fix the sink in the kitchen. They would turn the garbage disposal on, and next thing you know, it would leak. And she's all like, "Yeah, he's come out to fix it like 3 times, right?" I took a look under the sink, okay, one time, and I was like, "I see your problem. Two male pipes put together with a little ring around them.
What?
Yeah, yeah, two male pipes
Wow.
butted up with a little ring, thinking that that will hold, right? You can't do that. And this is just one example, right? So I went to Home Depot. I was like, you know what? I got you. I'm gonna fix this. I'm gonna fix this right now. I went to Home Depot. I bought a little, like a plumbing kit for under the kitchen sink, and I reran it. Never had another leak ever again, right? Because I'm not retarded.
Right,
Like
yeah.
I'm not dumb. I'm not gonna put two male pipes trying to like what one of them has to be a female pipe. One of them has to be a male pipe. If you're gonna put a male pipe somewhere, it has to go into a female pipe. It's just plumbing logic, right? like
Two.
like
You didn't like that there was two male pipes touching?
bro, I'm sorry if me and you were off. I don't expect me to jump into you. You know what I mean? Then not into yours. like
That's funny.
it doesn't work. It doesn't work, dude. So at the end of the day, yeah, the landlord is not a very bright person, and he put two pipes that don't interlock with each other, male and female pipes. He put two that butted heads, which I will never do with you or anybody else. But two pipes that butted up. Nah, it didn't work. But I wouldn't fix it. But the point is that I love DIY. I love fixing stuff. I love like even before I was showing you on my wall over there, I was fixing some of the old work that my lady did that unesthetic, and now I just got to paint it, little stuff like that, And now obviously I'm not gonna go in and build a wall. I'm not gonna put 2x4s together and put a wall up and
Yeah.
do all that. That's a little bit out of my expertise, right? But I could run electrical. If the wall's already there, I could definitely drill holes and run the electrical, like and put some flooring in. I don't know how good of a job I would do if I had to tile something or put in carpet. I've never put carpet in, so it's like things like that. There's certain things that I can't do, and I'm aware of that, right?
Right.
But then there are a lot of things that I can do, and so fixing up a house, depending on what you're asking, like, do I need to rip out the kitchen and put in new cabinets and everything? I could do that. That no problem, like that's easy work. Putting in a new sink, putting in, whatever it may be. But oh, demolition, I could definitely do demolition. If you can't do demolition, then I don't know, there might be something a little wrong. But yeah, like things like that, right? Like there's certain things that I am able to do and certain things that I'm not. And being aware of that is definitely going to save you a lot of money in certain aspects, right?
Right.
Helped our dad build his kitchen for the most part. I put all those damn cabinets together,
Yeah.
every single one, bro. I didn't build the drawers though. I told our dad, I was like, I'm not doing the drawers, not doing them. I hate building drawers. But the cabinets, yeah, I put all those cabinets together, dude. All of them. Every single one in his kitchen. He didn't pay me for it, but he kind of did. He kind of did. I think he actually gave me some money. I was still in LA at the time. I know that he bought me food, got me drunk. It was, yeah, I think he gave me some cash too. I guess it works out.
Yeah. Right. That's funny. So uh, what is your plan after let's say your 5 years comes and goes, right? What's your plan a little more long term, say 10 years from now, right? You get your first house hopefully within the next 5 years, perhaps you even have a kid by then, or not. No, what's after that? What's after the 5 year mark? Because there's that saying, like, hey, how does it feel now that you made it? It's like, well, there's different stages of making it, right? Like
Yeah.
the first time you bought a new car, you made it. The first time you quit your job, you made it, right? Like you no longer have to work. Oh, the first time you made $1 million on a single transaction, you made it. So as we progress up, like what happens after your 5 year, you made it to your 5 year mark, right? This is something that you've been wanting, you've been striving for. 5 years from now, boom, now what?
Damn, that's a good question, man. Um, I think for me, because I hope in 5 years, I'm at a better place than I am now. Whether or not I own a home, um, who knows? Especially here in this market. If I move into another state, who knows? But I think for me in 5 years, after 5 years especially, is kind of just like building memories for the kids.
Hmm.
Like a lot of people might be like, oh, I want to be financially this, I want to be financially that. For me, it's more so like that is going to come with time. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. So the finances they're going to develop, they're going to get there over time. But it's after 5 years, definitely like, giving the kids memories that I look back on, right? Like the memories that I have when I was a kid, the memories I have when I was 16, 17, 10, 11, right? Like I think that would be my next outlook, is just really like kind of giving them those memories that they can remember for the rest of their lives. Like my grandfather did for me, you knew my grandpa Everett for a very short amount of time, but one thing I can say about him is that he was a very humble, a very loving, a very open-minded, for the most part, a very successful, very intelligent individual, and very stubborn. He could be very stubborn at times, but that's I want to do for my kids what he did for me, And I think in 5 years, so like when we're talking about year 6, year 7, year 8, and even beyond, is doing that, you know. Like I think I think a lot of people in life will put a lot of emphasis on like how do I make the next quick buck.
Hmm.
5 years from now, I want to drive a Bugatti and have a mansion and be rich kind of mentality. It That's not my end goal. My end goal is to be comfortable, which for every person is going to be different. For you, you're comfortable, it might is going to be different than mine. You know, your comfortable is going to be different than Bobby's comfortable. My comfortable is going to be different than our dad's comfortable. You know, like there's comfortable is going to be different for everybody, right? But within 5 years, like I feel comfortable now. You know, like I'm not worried about finances, right? I'm not worried about like how I'm going to put food on the table. I'm not worried about if the electricity bill is going to get paid, or you know if I'm going to be able to pay my car insurance, or if I'm going to be able to make it to work, right? Like I don't worry about those things. Yeah, you know I live in a very expensive state, and things are probably going to increase in cost, but I still don't worry about those things because I am comfortable financially. I'm comfortable right now, but I'm not where I want to be. And the finances part, as long as you do what you need to do, will always come. Like as long as you are putting in the work to get to your financial goals, it will come naturally. So I don't like to think about like where I'm going to be 5 years from now financially because I know that it's going to get there. It's just going to take time, but it will get there. So over 5 years, yeah, dude, just building memories, man. Building memories with the family, spending time. There was this, I think it was on a TED Talk or something, but it said, there was this guy who said, you know, when we reach the end of our life, when we're 90, 100 years old, we're not going to think back on, I wish I had a better phone. I wish I had a better car, or I wish I spent more time on the internet. The one thing that you think about when you reach that age is, I wish I spent more time with the people I love.
Right.
And that's like a huge thing for me, is that like finances, I could be rich, but would I be happy? Like obviously I have financial goals that I want to achieve in the future, right? Like I don't want to struggle. I don't want to live off of Social Security and have to work a part-time job at freaking
You,
Stater
you
Brothers.
have a million
You
memories,
know,
but you have one leg and you still have to crawl to work.
Yeah, like I don't want to be that guy either, Like I am setting myself up to be able to live my life when it comes time to not working anymore, right?
Right.
But during that time, I want to be able to at least, spend time with people that really matter.
Well, what do you say? Um, Obviously, we don't have to come up with a definite answer this very moment. We could talk about it, but what do you say this next 5 years? Uh, we kind of focus on trying to, before we obviously we'll still make memories and all that kind of stuff, but what do you say before we go gung ho on all that kind of stuff? What do you say, instead of us going individual on our own paths, we unite, and we could potentially get our first cheap fixer upper, or first small unit, like you're talking like three or four, like a triplex, fourplex, something small, manageable, and not a lot of risk, you know. Well,
Yeah.
no, not. You don't have to answer this very second, but if we were to combine
Well,
forces, that might be, uh, it might be a blessing in disguise, and we just don't know it.
okay, I do have two things to say about that. Is that one, yes, I'm totally up for it, right? Because it's just an investment in both of our futures. So yes, yeah, I would be totally up for that. The second thing is that if we did do that, we would have to go through like a management company. And the only reason I say that is because it goes back to what Biggie Small said, and that's money and blood don't mix like two dicks and no bitch. Find
Yeah,
yourself in serious shit.
yeah,
So it's not because I don't trust you. It's not because I don't think that you have ill intentions or anything like that. It's just we don't know where 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line leads us, right? And finances is never something that I would want to beef with you over.
right.
Dude, I have too much respect for you. I love you too much, bro. And so, like, getting in business like that, it could lead down a very bad path, and
Yeah,
that's just seen throughout history, right? Brothers, brother sister, whatever it may be, sister, like money can become a problem for people, and I would never want that to be a problem for us,
Right. Yeah,
like
I think of
so
things like Ben
so
Mala, how we talked about that cool story earlier about how his three sons all want to be a part of the family business. They do business with each other. They're constantly thinking of how to grow it with each other and all kinds of cool things like that.
it and the crazy thing is though is that when he passes away, right? Like they might think all these things now because their dad's still alive. So it's not so much competing with each other, but it's more so like, oh, let's make dad proud. Let's make dad proud, right? That could be their mindset right now. It's like let's grow the business, but then once he passes away, how's that get separated, right?
Yeah.
And then what kind of drama develops from